All right, Jordan, it can't be all great news out of fall camp. Obviously, when you're on the field and you're having competitive reps and you're going full contact with pads and all that kind of stuff, there is going to be injuries, whether they be significant or insignificant. There have been injuries for the Tigers in these 2 short weeks of fall camp. Obviously, Dabo talked a little bit about it, in his presser. And unfortunately for Jarvis Green, he's one of those unfortunate guys that got pretty much a season-ending injury. He'll be out for majority of the season. Dabo did say that he would have a chance to come back towards the end of the season, but that they may just try to, depending on where the running back room situation is at that point, they may just try to hold him and get a medical red shirt for him and get this entire year back for him. So unfortunate news for Jarvis Green. You hate to hear that about any guy, regardless of whether they were, supposed to start or be a depth guy or whatever. The amount of work that these guys put in the offseason, you hate to see it come to such a quick end in fall camp.
Yeah, I hate it for him. I mean, and especially a guy like Jarvis who has wanted to be a Clemson Tiger, and he fought really hard, worked really hard to get the offer. I remember the social media campaign. It felt like from the fan base at times because they were wondering why he didn't have an offer. So he's one of those homegrown kids that you can't help but root for. He's kind of has a chip on his shoulder. He wasn't the most highly recruited, really productive at Dutch Fork, but just didn't get the love from recruiting sites. And so I think he's kind of been just waiting his turn, biding his time. He's been working really, really hard, but injuries have cropped up at different points in his career, and now this one is going to be the biggest setback for him. And I think the good thing is that because if you can get this year back, it does mean he does still have a good amount of his eligibility left. Hey, and listen, shout out to College Football Clemson over on Instagram. He's a good follow. Gotten to know him. He pointed out a stat to me today that Jarvis. It's kind of obvious, but Jarvis Green has more playoff touchdowns than Will Shipley and Phil Mott. So there's that. So I think you always hate it for him. You didn't really expect him to come in and be one of the top guys in the room this season, but you do need that depth, and with Peyton Straco also out, who we mentioned. You want to have as many guys available as possible, especially when you have a room that has that doesn't have a proven commodity yet, as high as we are on Adam Randall potentially being that guy, and Gideon Davidson as a true freshman being really productive for you. David Izumame, and you still have Keith Adams Jr. You have guys that you feel like can give you some quality play, but you just you haven't seen it. It's the biggest question mark on the team. And you literally have no proven commodities there. You want to have as many guys available when you're in a situation like that. So hate it for Jarvis. He's worked extremely hard. But this is it's another setback for him.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Super unfortunate. Speedy recovery for him. But outside of that, it doesn't seem that Clemson has any real significant injuries. Obviously, a couple offensive linemen missed a practice. Peter Woods was out sick, didn't feel well. So they held him from practice, didn't want anybody else getting sick or spreading it to anybody. But it sounds like from an injury standpoint, Clemson's in a pretty good situation. A couple knick-knack injuries here or there. And, that's to be expected. These guys ain't been in full pads in quite some time. So anytime, if you've ever played football, once you get back into pads, you get little knick-knack injuries here and there that, they want to hold guys for or put them in no contact jersey or something like that. But Jarvis Green being that only guy that kind of sustained a significant injury. So fairly good news on the injury front for the Clemson Tigers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got guys that are, like you said, that are dealing with injuries. I mentioned Jayln Lucas earlier. Khalil Barnes was in a yellow
That guy,
jersey.
I mean, talking about Jayln Lucas, man, like what, man, dude, like I hate it for him.
Yeah,
Um, it just seems like he's no matter what, he just cannot stay healthy.
yeah,
And I know he's not out for an extended period of time, but it's just like it's always Jayln Lucas, man. It's just I hate it for him because I think he's a really good player, and I think he could be a big part of this defense if he could ever get any sort of luck in the injury department.
yeah.
I think people would change their minds about how they view Jayln Lucas if he could get any luck in the injury department.
Yeah, with the 100%. I mean, and I do think like the injuries have built up for him over the course of his career. I mean, I don't like. I think it's robbed him maybe a little bit of what made him such a highly touted player coming out of high school. But
Yeah,
he was a five-star borderline
he was.
coming out of Malden. I don't know why I could not think of the name. Um, So like I think like he's another homegrown guy and one of the top players in the state. Like you always root for those guys, and for Clemson, really for both in-state schools, like those homegrown guys that were that were big time recruits. They hit at a really high rate.
Yeah,
So it just you always hate it when a guy like Lucas is who chose to stay home and over when he could have gone pretty much anywhere. He was one of the he was highly recruited by everybody. Where he just hasn't been able to stay on the field for an extended period of time. So hate it for him. But like you said, Clemson largely is in a really really good spot, and it's not long term for Lucas, but you want him to be able to go through fall camp without any sort of like setbacks and missing time. You want him to get reps because you're going to need him. I mean,
yeah,
he's the senior guy in the room now, pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah.
You know, Dabo talked about Miles Oliver, who has played basically nothing in his career. He's been here for like 4 years now. It just you think of the guys in that cornerback room that just have not, gotten that opportunity. The guys deeper in the safety room, like Kylan Webb. Have we don't ever talk about Kylan Webb. He
No,
just hasn't been able to get that opportunity to play on the field. I guess that's one thing that you potentially could get from guys missing time here and there is, maybe that is more reps for the guys deeper in the depth chart, but you want to have everybody healthy.
yeah.
But
I don't,
but
I
like
don't,
you
I
said,
don't, yeah, I don't mind that in spring. When some of your top guys are out, I think that's almost a good thing in spring sometimes, which is why the coaches always do those off-season surgeries right there at spring because they're like, these veteran guys, they don't really need spring, right? Let's get these young guys in here and get them into, a ton of reps, but closer to, and then, with Jayln Lucas at some point, like it's got to play on your psyche, man, with the amount of injuries that you've had. At what point are you comfortable to go out there and really cut loose and play like you can play, when you're constantly, this injury, that injury, over and over again, at a certain point, I think it messes with your psyche and you can't really cut loose on the field because you're constantly worried about injury.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're gonna, we hope that Clemson just continues as far as the luck they've had so far. But you hope that continues. I mean, hell, the team you just that you're about to play on August 30th had a kind of a scare the other day with Garrett Nussmeier. So like it just anything can happen. All it takes is one rep, one play, and your season, the outlook on your season changes. So I'm knocking on wood really loud.
Absolutely. All it takes is planting your foot and something going wrong, and doesn't even have to be a contact injury. Most of these season-ending knee injuries are non-contact most of the time. So I'm with you. Let's knock on wood. Let's keep Clemson in the green when it comes to the injury updates. hopefully next week we don't have any injuries to talk about. And again, speedy recovery to Jarvis Green. Hope he, gets back as quick as possible and can be better than ever when he gets back.
Absolutely.